All right, we are live talking with Rashad Beard from Panther Nation podcast on the Our Lads Football Network on the Our Lads Football YouTube channel. Rashad, of course, covers the Carolina Panthers, if you didn't know. How's it going, Rashad?
Yeah, pretty obvious, right? I got it all covered with the Panthers. Yep, it's my squad.
Yeah, and Rashad has had a good habit of being the first guest to kick off. Because remember, you were my first guest to kick off the off-season preview, and now you're the first guest to recap the NFL draft. So even though you didn't have a pick,
thing. I don't know if that's a good thing or bad thing, but we'll roll with it.
Well, the first one is not a good thing. This one is just a coincidence. So yeah, you want to stay away from me interviewing you early in the offseason. That's for sure.
Noted.
So yeah, we're going to go over the draft picks. Carolina had 7, actually ended up with a pick in each round. And Dan Morgan had his first draft. So I tell you what, oh, by the way, of course, got to remind everybody here who is watching live or on demand, subscribing to this channel, especially if you're a Carolina Panther fan, because Rashad is always going to be here to talk Carolina Panthers football with us. So you never want to miss that. And we're also going to give away a PDF for the draft review guide on the show. I believe we're going to do that, even though I haven't figured out exactly how we're going to get the contact information, but we'll figure it out as we go. Okay, so let's start, first of all, with Dan Morgan. Rashad, what did you think about his first draft?
Overall, I thought it was okay. I think we got to dive into each pick to really kind of attack the nuance of why I feel a certain type of way. But overall, with the new coaching staff, new direction, I'm not mad at the draft. I think it's a developmental draft. That's something you've heard me say if you've been listening to anything related to the Carolina Panthers, any kind of draft talk. It's not one of those drafts where you're going to see immediate impact from any of the players, in my opinion. But it's going to be a 2 to 3 year thing. And so, the thing is this, we've got to give those guys time. The coaching staff, Dan Morgan, they've got to have time to develop the guys they select. You've heard me say it over and over and over again. The biggest problem with the Carolina Panthers is that we change direction every year. Every time there's a new coach, there's a new philosophy, new coaches. I didn't draft this guy. He doesn't fit what I want to do. And so guys get lost in the sauce. There's so many guys I can name on this roster now that are still on the roster that have been drafted by prior regimes, and they just never develop. And then hopefully, we've learned our lesson, ownership down, right? Have learned their lesson and let these guys develop.
Yeah, because that was actually my first major note as well, that the top 3 picks have all limited experience. It doesn't mean that they haven't performed well with that limited experience, but it's like you said, when you come into the NFL and you're basically only a 1-year starter type guy, and it looks like, again, the top 3 picks fit that mold, that it is going to be what you said, a developmental type deal. And that's left up to the coaching staff. That's also something that we've talked about a lot, and something that has really bothered you regarding this franchise is the lack of coaching and developing players.
Yeah, I mean, nail on the head. That's the biggest problem with the Carolina Panthers, is that we lack direction and it starts at the top, right? I've been very critical of ownership. I will say this year, it appears that things have gotten better. Now, I always call it like I see it. I have not been the happiest with the ownership. And again, he's going to run it the way he wants to. My opinion doesn't matter. But obviously, the proof is in the pudding, right? Two wins last year has not been very good. And it all starts at the top. I think he's starting to learn his lesson a little bit here, just based off the movements and based off the way things are going. You can tell some things are starting to shift with the way things are working. So hopefully, all we can do at the end of the day, I sat down with Steve Smith a couple weeks ago, Steve Smith Sr. on Cut to It. And listen, one of the things he talks about all the time is, listen, at the end of the day, you guys are fans. He says this respectfully, right? We're fans, and we can't change the outcomes. At the end of the day, whether we like it or not, the moves are being made, and we have to live with them. And either you're going to pack your bags and become fans of another franchise, or you're going to keep cheering. So all we can do at this point is hope that Dave Tepper learns his lessons and allows his coaching staff to do their thing. That's
Yep.
really all we can do.
Yep. That is exactly the way that I felt when the Jets hired Joe Douglas. I said, hey, you know what? I like what I see so far. And ever since then, I've been on board. And just like you said, you have to either trust the man and trust what they're doing, or you don't. And if you don't, okay. But hey, you know what? You got to root for your team as best as possible. And that's all you can do. Not that you have to take it up to you know what. If the coaching sucks or
Yeah.
the moves regarding your general manager and your owner are pretty similar. So it's just a matter, though, of, and I think, like you said, that's why it's important to voice your opinion as a fan, because then that's what gets, you would imagine, the owner especially to understand something's not right. And so Dan Morgan gets his opportunity for the draft for the very first time. And Carolina Panthers fans, like yourself, were probably sitting there late in the draft thinking, well, you know, I mean, we don't have a pick, so I guess, you know, this is just entertaining. You know, this is what happens sometimes. And then, boom, all of a sudden, Carolina Panthers make a move, come into the first round. And before they made the move, what did you think, based on your research and everything that you were hearing? What did you believe the move was for?
Well, I obviously knew it was for a wide receiver. Which one?
Okay.
I had no idea.
Right.
But this is something. This is why we live stream. We live streamed the first day, even though we didn't have a pick. We were on watching and reacting live because we knew it was a possibility. Moving from 32nd into the late first round is plausible, right? That's something that you're not going to give up a lot of draft capital to do. So we knew, had there been a run on wide receivers, which it started to happen, right? You saw a couple guys go. Xavier Worthy went, and that was a top target for me. I thought Xavier Worthy adds something to this offense that we haven't seen in a long time. That speed, the ability to stretch the field. So I thought, let's try to go get Worthy. The Bills, I don't know why they did what they did. Arch enemy, you can't seem to get over the Chiefs hump, but you trade to the Chiefs and give them one of the best weapons in the draft. That makes zero sense to me. That will probably come back to haunt them over the next couple of years. But they swapped picks right in front of us. And so when that happened, I figured, hey, we're probably going to get ready to take a wide receiver here, and just didn't know which one. Now when it happened, and I don't know if you want me to get into the pick, but
Sure.
Xavier Legette, I believe we all knew this was going to happen, right? I kind of thought maybe it would be Ladd McConkey or another wide receiver. Maybe I think Pearsall had already went. There were some other guys that I was like, all right, I can see us taking one of these guys. But Xavier Legette seemed like, if you're reading the tea leaves, he seemed like he was going to be the guy from the jump. He's a South Carolina guy. He's local. And he basically went out. He came out and told us that, hey, if he's sitting there at 33, the Panthers said they're going to take me. He said that during the draft process.
Okay.
Right. So everything you needed to know had already been said. Like they pretty much said that this was going to be the pick. I mean, obviously you don't want it out there. Canellis tried to walk it back. He tried to say, hey, we told a lot of guys that. But truthfully, I'm sure he was one of the only guys we told that. But you got to play chess, so I understand it. But Xavier Legette is interesting. Very interesting pick. Again, like you mentioned, not very much production. There's really reasons to that, right? He's had some issues. He lost his parents, some injury issues with COVID year. There's some things that attribute to why. Lackluster quarterback play. Terrible offensive coordination, right? There's a lot of things, right? Once he got Spencer Rattler, once he got a NFL caliber play caller, right? Things got better for him. And that's when he completely flipped the script. So yes, you could say red flag, 1 year production. Easy to say that, right? But you got to dig a little bit deeper. The guy has sure hands. I believe what his ability to the routes across the middle of the field, the digs, the slants, that's where he wins, right? He's a big bodied receiver. He can kind of shade off of the close off the cornerbacks and get those guys out the way. And I believe that's where he's going to win. Now, he's speedy too, right? He can stretch the field. Is his route running there completely? Not quite. He's going to develop, and even he'll tell you that. He's been saying, my releases are going to get better. I'm going to be, develop a full route tree. He's got to get better. The great news, though, this is what I say about the way we constructed our roster. He doesn't have to be wide receiver 1 day one.
Yep.
right? That's the beautiful thing about this. You got Deontay Johnson, who we picked up from the Steelers. Love that pick. You still got Adam Thielen, right? You still got Jonathan Mingo. I believe we're going to bring him along. He's going to be productive, right? But I'm not calling for 1,000-yard season his rookie year. That's not the expectation for me. You know what I mean? So, and I think another underrated aspect of his game is the special teams aspect. He contributes on special teams. We've even had him running special teams drills already at minicamp. So I think one stat that I have is that he averaged 26.6 yards per return on 25 returns over the past 2 years, taking one to the house. You know what I mean? So he can play special teams, especially with the new kickoff rules, right? That's a part to this. That plays a part into this. And so, again, I think that may be the reason as to why we drafted Xavier Legette with our first round. Well, traded up to get him in the first round.
Do you think that the team views him as a high number 2 and not necessarily a number 1?
Personally, I would. That's exactly how I view him. I view him as a high-end number 2. I'm not going to put him as if he develops into a number
Sure.
1, great. But year 1, year 2, let's move you around. We're going to put you at we're going to put you at the Y. We'll move you around, right? We'll move you around the field, put you in the slot. We'll put you outside. We'll see where you fit, and we'll develop you into maybe an X at the end of the day. We'll see what happens. But I don't know. I don't anticipate that happening. And this is why you have Deontay Johnson. This is why you have Adam Thielen there. So you kind of protecting yourself just in case. But yeah, I think he's a weapon that you're going to move around. There's no set role for him. It's whatever he develops into, wherever we can get the best out of him. And I think that's what you're going to see out of him year 1.
Yeah, and taking a look at the rest of the receiver depth chart right now, because you mentioned Deontay Johnson was a big offseason acquisition. Thielen is still a very steady presence in the slot. But you've got Terrence Marshall still trying to develop. Jonathan Mingo is going into year 2 next year. Both of them are second-round draft picks, even though obviously Dan Morgan did not draft them. Smith Marset could also be a very interesting player that we talked about, given maybe an opportunity now to finally take advantage of his abilities. So what do you think about the room? Because it definitely looks like it's a lot more exciting on paper than it has been the last few years.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing that Canellis has talked about and has executed is bringing in talent and competition, right? It's not a high-end room, but I think they're gonna push each other. I think Deontay Johnson is very, very underrated. I think we truly could have a wide receiver 1. I think he's dealt with some issues up there in Pittsburgh. Wasn't quite getting the football, but man, he is putting in so much work right now. If you follow him on Twitter or on X, he is posting all kind of workout videos. He looks great. I cannot wait to see what he does in this offense. So I'm excited about Deontay. I'm really excited about him. But like you said, Terrace Marshall is a guy. He is the exact guy that I described earlier in the introduction of this pod, right? A guy that got drafted. He's dealt with several coaching changes. He had his best production under Steve Wilkes, who was the interim head coach, right? He had we thought we had a guy. We thought we had him. We saw the peak of Terrace Marshall at that point. Since then, Frank Reich fell right back under the radar. So we don't know what we had. And he requested a trade last year. Obviously, that did not matriculate to anything. So we will see with him. But I can see him actually not making this 53-man roster. And a guy you did not bring up is undrafted free agent Jalen Coker is a guy you need to keep an eye on out of Holy Cross. Very highly touted wide receiver. Steve Smith had him ranked in the top 20 in 2024 draft. Calls him the best route runner in this class. Keep an eye on him. We had him on our show. Very good kid. And so keep an eye. I'm not saying he's going to make the roster. Please don't take my words for that. I'm just saying
that practice squad.
We paid him. We paid him as an undrafted free agent. So he's a high priority.
A couple $100,000.
Played him a couple $100,000. So I think the expectation is for him to push and make the 53-man roster, but he has to work for it. It is an uphill battle, like you just mentioned. There's a lot of good names in that room, right? He's got to overcome, your Smith Marsets, your Jonathan Mingo. So it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for him. But if he does, I think he's a guy that can develop into maybe a number 2 down the road. Maybe you have your 1 and 2 in Legette and Coker down the road. I'm just talking out loud, but it could happen.
That's what we're here for.
Best case scenario. If that happens, the Panthers are in good shape.
Well, again, what I really like about it, and like you said, there may not be a true like number one like star guy on the roster, but there's a lot of other. Again, it's a much deeper, exciting group of prospects that look like that they could all contribute at some point in their careers. Hopefully, of course, here. I'm taking a look at the Our Lads draft guide. You can still purchase this. This is actually the best time to purchase it because don't think that the draft is over. What use is this? Well, the reason this is useful is because, matter of fact, every pick, including Coker, has a profile here in the guide. So I was taking a look at it, and Coker.
Yeah. What does it say about Coker? Read it off. Read it off to me.
Yeah, he was projected as a 5th to 7th round draft pick.
Exactly.
So as high as 5th. So they got him as a college free agent, as you said. 3-year starter, all Patriot League for 3 seasons. So if you're getting a guy from the FCS, you better be the best from that league that you're in. And he obviously was. He was a first-team All-American in 2023. Set a program record and leading the nation in touchdowns with 15, and finishing as a Walter Payton Award finalist. They say he's a consistent big play threat against lower level college football. So obviously, it's all about what he does when he plays with the big boys now. Overall, I can throw in some other little notes here. The consistency and reliability in his game with the occasional flashes of dominance are encouraging signs when projecting such a large leap into the NFL. Rare explosion for a player at his size. He's at 6'1", 208. Runs a 4.57, advanced route runner, like you said. Quarterback friendly target with huge hands. Does a lot of the little things right. And then the only, I guess, the negative, because there's always going to be negatives, does not play big with the ball in his hands, struggles to create after the catch. But to get a kid like that.
Yeah, I would agree with all that. I would agree with all that assessment. I think that he's definitely a reliable receiver, good hands, doesn't drop many footballs, can get open with his route running, which is something we have missed around these parts. And so now you got a couple good you got like 3 good route runners. You got Deontay Johnson, very good route runner. You got Adam Thielen, very good route runner, and potentially Coker, another good route runner. And so, and like you said, I think the biggest thing is that, you know, he's got to show up against the NFL caliber talent. Even Dave Canales has said that, right? We got to see what he can do against NFL caliber talent. They have joined together with the rookies have joined the veterans this week, and so we're going to start to see training camp is going to be very good for him. But I just want to say this: this is not unlikely for him to make the roster. We've seen undrafted guys make 53-man roster all the time and show out. So it's not It's not improbable at all. The greatest wide receiver in the history of NFL, Jerry Rice, came from a FCS school, HBCU. So come on, it's probable. It's probable for sure.
Okay, so that is wide receiver, and again, Legette as well as Coker. Definitely worthy of our discussion here. Next up, they go back to offense with our lad's top-rated running back for this class, Jonathon Brooks, who, like Legette, just like a one-year starter production-wise. But, Legette, different path. Brooks, he just had some really good players in front of him. So, yeah, a little bit different path. But bottom line is the major news on Brooks is the recovery from the ACL injury, even though nowadays, matter of fact, we've seen that with Breece Hall last year. He made a really good recovery. Most of the time, it's usually going to be, as long as everything works out well with the doctor and rehab, he should be fine. But the other thing that sticks out with Brooks is he's going to add an instant impact in the receiving game more than anything, and eventually could turn into, of course, the number 1 running back on this team.
Ding, 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 ding. You hit the nail right on the head. The receiving ability out the backfield is why he is a Carolina Panther. We have not seen that since Christian McCaffrey. And let me say this. I think Chuba has gotten better, right? Chuba has improved his hands because he was terrible. But he's developed. He's developed into a really, really good running back and a complete running back, right? But I think Jonathon Brooks, very, very, very good. And you got to add some context to how we got him, right? Because we traded back. We traded all the way back until like the late second round and then traded back up, right? So we traded back up into the second.
Okay.
But not only did we trade, when we traded back, we acquired a 2025 future second round pick from the Rams when they took Braden Fisk. So there's a lot that goes into just to acquiring Jonathon Brooks. It's not just about Jonathon Brooks himself. There's the chess move that was made by Dan Morgan to complete, right? Remember all that stuff we gave up to get Bryce Young? How about we got a first round pick back? How about now we got our future second round pick back? How about we had 2 second round picks, right? So the chess that was played, right, to make yourself whole again. Shout out to Dan Morgan, kudos to him. But and to not only that, it end up like you said, the top running back in the draft, Jonathon Brooks, very good, slippery guy. His ability to make the first man miss is incredible. A lot of upside. He's only had one fumble. Excuse me. He's only 20 years old. He's not going to be the nuanced route runner, right? You're not going to be able to slide him out, put him in the slot, anything like that. But he's going to be very good. You taking those swing passes out the backfield, making that first man miss, and he's out of here. Like that's the type of guy you're going to get, Jonathon Brooks. A lot of forced missed tackles. It's very good. Like you said, this is going to be another situation like we talked about with Xavier Legette, right? Where the running back room is crowded, right? You've got Chuba Hubbard. You got Miles Sanders. We just signed Rashad Penny, right? It's crowded. It is a crowded running back room. And so may the best man win. I do think it's going to be a running back by committee. So when you talk about fantasy things like that, Jonathon Brooks, and I'm not all familiar with how dynasty and stuff works, but if you need somebody for the future, this is the kid.
Yes.
This is the getting Jonathon Brooks later, bro. Not this year. This year won't be the time because the carries will be split amongst those 4 guys, depending, maybe 4. But next year, when Chuba Hubbard's potentially, he's on a contract year this year. Miles Sanders, I'm sure, is walking out that door with the way that contract is set up. There's no way he stays after this year. So next year, he could be RB1. And if you go back and look what Canales did with Rachaad White in Tampa Bay, this kid has a ton of upside if he can stay healthy. So I'm all on the Jonathon Brooks train. I'm not going to be honest with you. I got to be honest, Greg. I'm consistent. We've come up here and we talked a lot about running backs and Christian McCaffrey. If you go back and look at some of those episodes, I'm not the biggest fan of paying running backs. I'm not the biggest fan of spending high draft capital on a running back. However, with what I mentioned earlier, with getting back those picks and maneuvering in the draft and doing what they did, I'm not mad at this pick at all. And I think this is a future play. Next year, in year 3, that's when this pick is going to pay off.
Well, you mentioned White, and that's a good reference because that's what really sticks out about White at Tampa Bay. And now, did he have a lot of carries? Yes. But the thing that really makes White the player he is with Tampa Bay and how successful he was with Canales there was his ability to catch out of the backfield and make big plays in space. And so that's exactly, I'm assuming that's what he saw in Brooks. And so getting the first running back rated in the draft in the second round makes a lot of sense because, again, this is about where everybody thought the top running back was going to go somewhere early in the second round. And then you wind up, like you said, getting an extra pick out of it anyway, which is awesome. So, by the way, Blackshear, taking a look at the depth chart, Blackshear, you think he's only on the team because he's going to be like maybe the number 1 kick returner?
Yeah. So he offers extreme return ability, right? So he's a very good returner. It's going to be tough. That running back room is crowded, man. So I'm sure somebody's going to get, between Rashad Penny, between, Miles Sanders, but maybe Blackshear. It just depends because we have so many guys that offer special teams ability. When you talk about Xavier Legette, you talk about Smith-Marsette, Blackshear, all those guys can return. So I think that it's going to be very interesting when it comes to the rest of those guys. And really quick, going back to Jonathon Brooks, just an interesting stat here. He's the only running back in the 2024 draft that was top 5 in career yards per touch, 6.8 yards per touch, and missed forced tackles per touch. So he's very, very good. He's going to make that first man miss. And another interesting note, of his 1,139 yard rushing yards, 732 were deemed after first contact. So that's how that's what we're talking about here. This guy can make a man miss and I'm excited to see him again. We'll see him get in the rotation when he's healthy, when he's ready to go. But I think year 2, year 3 is when it's really going to pay.
All right. So I was putting up the depth chart as you spoke. So now we can take a look at it while we're talking. And I tell you what I want to do is I want to skip over to the 4th round pick, since it's offense, and we'll stick with the offensive approach. So in this one, so the 4th round. Oh, and the other thing I wanted to say is that you were talking about dynasty, and we will have a little bit of a dynasty segment before we wrap up. But I just wanted to note, I was taking a look at the dynasty league that I'm in with your partner Dave, and Brooks was the 9th pick in the 1st round. So he was the first running back picked in our league. And he went ahead of, players like Bo Nix, Brock Bowers, Brian Thomas, and so forth. So that's just to let you know a little bit about Dynasty, which, again, I want to talk more later. Okay, tight end. Now, to be able to get one of the top tight end prospects, because Brock Bowers was on an island of his own. So, okay, he's like a freak. But I think a lot of people thought Sanders was the second best tight end for most of the process. Now, it didn't end out that way with our lads. They didn't rate him as the second best, but still, I think overall, there's a lot of people who believe this kid has got great potential based on his athletic traits. Now, there was some mystery or confusion, maybe you could say, because it was a little bit of a surprise that he didn't test as well at the combine. A lot of people thought he's just a great athlete. Look at what we're going to see at the combine. It never happened. So I'm interested to find out whether or not there was any talk there about that, because he's not a very big guy. He's one of those. He's not one of those traditional big tight end types, which the NFL is going away from anyway. But what I would assume that they really like about him is that he's got the ability to be used in a variety of roles and make life very difficult on the opposition when he's out there. Because he can play in a lot of different spots, backfield, wide out, slot. That's going to make Dave Canales happy as well.
Yep, bingo. And I may surprise you here, but this is my favorite pick of our draft. This is my favorite pick. The value that we got here, it's very good. Yeah, he's a very consistent vertical threat. He's going to be a mismatch for a linebacker. He's going to be a mismatch for a smaller cornerback that you try to put in the nickel. He's got very, very good, reliable hands. He didn't drop a single pass in 2023. He's only had 4 drops his entire career. So he's very good. And like you said, you can move him in the slot. You can play him in line. Now, he's not the best blocker in the world. I'm sure that's in your draft guide. I'm sure that's in the draft guide. Not going to be your best blocker. You're not going to put him out there in goal line scenario and tell him to move a pile. That's not happening. But if you need to stretch the field, get those seam routes going. Again, I think that's what Canales wants to do. Those quick passes, those quick seam routes, get him the football in space. He's going to make some guys miss. I think that's where you're going to win with him. And who cares about the underwear Olympics? I'm going to be honest with you. I don't care what he tested. When you turn on that film,
I agree.
When you turn on the film, this guy is very, very sized, a true athlete. And I guarantee you he plays faster than he runs for sure. And again, I think, like you said, a lot of the analysts had him running faster than the 4.69. But I'll take that. He plays way faster than that. He brought up Brock Bowers. Interesting stat here. Interesting stat alert. He had 99 catches over the past 2 seasons. That only trailed Brock Bowers, right? That's it.
Sure.
He had 12 20-yard receptions in 2023. That's just one fewer than Brock Bowers, who led the FBS. So this kid is good, man. He's good. He was in a very good offense. And I'll say this too. Had he not been in that offense with Xavier Worthy and Adonai Mitchell, he would have had been a 1,000-yard receiver. That's how good this kid is. He is very solid. Again, he's got to develop. He's got to get that blocking ability up, because we don't want to be predictable. We don't want to say, okay, when Jatavion Sanders is in the game, that means we're going to throw. We don't want to be predictable, right? So he's got to become a better blocker, and that falls on Canales, putting him in the best position to succeed, getting him in the best position to block, right? Get him some help. Make sure he's combo blocking with somebody, and not just out there on the island with somebody elite, right? So just we gotta protect him, right? Make sure he's not out there getting abused. But I like this player. He's my favorite player in this draft because of the value. Because I think, like you said, I think he is. I think he was probably ranked between the second and third round pick, and we got him at the top of the fourth. So I'm very happy about that value.
By the way, last year, going over what Canales ran in Tampa, the stats say that he ran. He ranked, or the Bucs ranked 7th in the NFL in using 12 personnel. So getting that second tight end means you're going to see a lot of Tremble and Sanders out there, and now this kind of eases the whole deal with Tremble, because I'm sure he hasn't lived up to his third round grade. I mean, his third round status. But the fact is that right now, that's what Sanders is here for. He's here for to be the number one guy. And before we move over to the defense, that's the thing that impresses me about this draft, is that you just look at it. You look at this depth chart. You see Legette, you see Sanders, you see Brooks. And by next year, you've got, as long as everything works out, everybody's developing well, you've got receiver, tight end, running back, impact players in one draft. So,
yep. And a young quarterback, so they can all.
And a young quarterback.
Yes. It's great. I mean, that's how you want to build a team, and I hope it works out. But we'll only time will tell. Only time will tell.
All right. Now on defense, so let's start with that third round pick. And matter of fact, the team went with 2 linebackers, 3rd and 7th. Trevin Wallace in round 3, and Michael Barrett from Michigan in round 7. Couple of not necessarily the same player. One of the things I noticed, and by the way, Trevin Wallace might have been a little bit of a surprise that he was drafted in the 3rd round. So there's that. So I'd like to know what it is that they liked about him so much that they picked him in the 3rd round. But what I thought was interesting about Barrett is that, besides, of course, playing 3 years as a starter for a national championship team last year as well, very good as a zone defender, zone cover linebacker. And I know this is something that we talked about, that the team needed. One of the needs going into the offseason for Carolina was finding a good cover linebacker, somebody that can cover running backs out of the backfield, and also somebody that could improve the zone coverage of the unit, which was not very good last year. So I'm not trying to put all that on Michael Barrett. I'm just trying to say that that's probably why he fits. And also Barrett brings potentially elite. You talked about special teams. He also brings potentially elite special teams play to that unit. So talk about those 2 players, including Wallace, and why they drafted him in the 3rd round.
Yeah, so Michael, well, going back to Barrett, I think Barrett is probably going to end up being, like you said, a special teams contributor. I don't see him, fitting in and doing anything too crazy when it comes to playing like inside or outside. I don't see him fitting in there just yet. Maybe he develops into that, but I got, as a 7th round pick, I mean, probably going to be special teams. But Trevin Wallace, again, I thought this was a reach. I'm going to be honest. When they announced the pick, there were other guys that I would have taken there. Guys like TJ Tampa, cornerbacks. We have even right now, even though we drafted one, we still have a major needed cornerback. So I was a little disappointed in that. But the reason why they like this kid, and I think he's starting to grow on a lot of people, is he has that dog mentality. He's a really, really good athlete. When he was doing his introductory press conference, he said they asked him to describe what dog meant to him. And he says, quote, "You go in there and hurt somebody and you be like, hey, I did this and I'm going to do it again." Right. This is the kind of guy. This is the kind of guy that Trevin Wallace is. He is a dog. He plays with fierceness, and he's going to do a lot of what Frankie Louvu was doing here. And I'm a huge Frankie Louvu guy.
Oh, yeah.
I liked him a lot. I was hoping that we paid him, but obviously in the priority of paying guys, it just did not fit with what we wanted to do. So we ended up drafting a guy, and I think we kind of got a guy that fits that same mold. Super athletic, right? This guy is at sideline to sideline. He can do a great job. He can cover ground. You can line up against a tight end, and he can hang right there. You can line him up against a slot. He'll try his best to hang in there. But he's raw, right? He's raw at the end of the day. He still has to learn, the linebacker position as a whole. And right now he's more reactive, right, than he is instinctive. So we got to get him to a situation where he's got to be able to read. And I think we got one of the greatest linebackers of all time that he has access to in Luke Kuechly. And Luke Kuechly spoke highly of him. And if he can get in the film room with Luke and starts to develop some of those keys, right?
Yeah.
He will be so good because that's how athletic he is. That he leaned on his athleticism a lot when he was at Kentucky because, hey, I can chase down these guys. I'm so quick, I'm so fast that I can chase down a guy. In the NFL, you won't be able to do that. You got to be able to react, and so hopefully he'll get better with that. But he can pursue very well. He can pursue very, very well, and we'll see what happens, man. I think he'll be in rotation. Where do you guys have him? You guys have him what? Inside
right behind
linebacker,
Shaq.
rotation up behind Shaq. I see that. I see that for sure. Definitely not going to be a starter day one. You got Josie Jewell sitting there too, so he'll rotate in. I think there's definitely going to be a role for him. You'll see him on the field, and as a third rounder, that's what we expect. But I wouldn't expect a huge impact player, day one.
Yeah, I mean, when you draft a guy in the third round at that spot, and just taking a look at the depth chart, what it says to me is he will hopefully be the guy that will be replacing Shaq at some point. The next couple of years, Shaq will go, lose a step, whenever that is. Trevin Wallace will then come in and be the man. So again, it's all about development. So and also showing, you mentioned, and I know I said it with Barrett, but he also shows very good range and coverage too. So that is also going to be a big help for something they lacked last year, and special teams. Okay, so let's now move on to, oh, you know what? Before we do that, I want to remind everybody, this was last year's draft guide. This was actually the draft review guide from last year. Okay, so this is coming out soon, and we are going to have that available. We'll have a link in the description. You can check it out. Go to rlads.com and get a head start on purchasing your draft review guide from rlads. Okay, so let's stick with the defense in our final two picks. 5th round, they went corner with Smith Wade from Washington State. And I guess the big knock on Smith Wade is his size. He's a slender kid. That's why that's the big knock. But taking a look at him on film, taking a look at his scouting report, he has a lot of good cover man skills, and that's obviously important for that position. And he also is somebody that is going to give it his all. I mean, he's an energy guy. And so you like that combination. So yes, if he was bigger, he might have been a 2nd round pick or a 3rd round pick, but he goes into the 5th round because of his size. Now it's up once again to the coaching staff to make sure that he can have a fit on this team. Where do you think he fits? Because I know he played more outside in college, but a lot of people believe that it's going to be better off, which is why I'm sure he's listed as the backup nickel right now on the depth chart.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the fit for him in the short term anyway. I think, like you mentioned, with his size, I think he's 5'9", 184. I don't see him lining up against Mike Evans too often. That's not ideal. No. But also, I'll say this though. I mean, he kind of mirrors in everything that you just described. He definitely mirrors Adante Jackson, who we just had on this roster now playing for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He has that little bit of dog. He plays with that energy. He's got a loud bark. What I mean? He might be in a small package, but he has a loud bark. And I'll give him credit for this too. I said this on my previous show with Steve Smith, that we talk about the size, we talk about the knocks, but the kid, he played in the Pac-12 against some of those really Pac-2 or 2-Pac, whatever it is, whatever you want to call it now. They don't have too many teams left, but he played in that tough conference where you lined up against some very, very tough talent, McMillan, Troy Franklin, those guys over in there, they were really good wide receivers. Over in Washington that he had to cover. I think he was the 2nd highest rated cornerback in the Pac-12. So he played outside. He has experience outside. I think he can develop into an outside cornerback. But in the short term, I definitely think he plays nickel, and he did a great job in learning the nickel position at the Senior Bowl. Right? He had never played nickel before until he got to the Senior Bowl, and did a great job according to all the scouts that were there. He did a wonderful job playing the nickel. And so I think he's going to stick at the nickel. I think he's going to play whatever the coaches ask him to do. He's that type of kid. He's got a lot of dog in him. And we'll see. I have no idea what to expect from him.
Sure.
But I'm excited. Backup nickel. I can see it. Troy Hill, again, like we said so many times now, you develop him. Troy Hill is getting older, probably won't be here next year. You put in Shaw Smith Wade there, and we'll see what happens. again, development.
Yep. And then the final pick on defense, as far as our show is concerned, at least, was the 6th round defensive tackle Jaden Crumedy from Mississippi State. And this is a big dude, 6'3", about 300 pounds. But what sticks out is his 5 years of starting experience. He's played in 53 games. He's played all along the defensive line. He's even stood up as a linebacker, which I'd like to see for a 300-pound guy if he was 300 pounds at the time. But he's got huge arms and also, good height and all that. So why do you think they made this pick? How does he fit in with the defense?
Yeah, I think definitely going to be an interior guy on that 3-man front. And I think he can, I think the biggest reason why they got him was his ability to stop the run. He's going to be able to eat up some space, clog those rushing lanes, allow our linebackers to move freely. I think that's the biggest reason why you got Jaden. He's, again, I think Dave made a joke when we were on the show with Steve Smith. I think he played under like 4 or 5 head coaches when he was at Mississippi State. And so Dave said he'll fit right in here in Carolina. But that's
True.
not funny. You're not supposed to laugh at that. You're not supposed to laugh. Only I can laugh at that. Panthers. No, that's funny. I'm joking. But yeah, so I think that again, I think a lot of experience. It's gonna take some time because he is an older player, right? He's been able to move some guys a little bit younger than him in college. Now he's in the NFL with the big boys. So he's got to develop his body, get stronger, and to play in the trenches. We've seen guys like Derrick Brown go through the same transition, getting used to the physicality in the trenches. It's going to take us some time.
Yep.
He's older, so he's got to accelerate. But I think he's going to be a rotational, like you guys have him, rotational interior defensive lineman or in 3-4 defense. And I like it. I like this. I like the kid. I think he's going to see some time. 6th round pick. So again, not expecting too much, but I like it.
Yeah, and it's also very important that because one of the things that has hurt the program, as you know, has been a lot of the draft, but even this is where you really pack on the depth on your depth chart is in the middle to late rounds. It's just not enough of those hits happening for Carolina over the years.
Yeah.
And that's why it's important that we can just say 6th round and 5th round and 7th round. But hey, it's very important that these guys stick, develop, and become part of the team.
Yep, that's nail on the head again. I think that for us, we got to get our 2nd and 3rd and 4th round guys to really knock it out the park. That's where that's what we've really been missing. Is that middle, that day 2 talent, getting those guys to develop into something solid. That's where we've been struggling, and then we try to backfill it with free agent talent, and we run out of money, and we're broke. We can't spend it, and so that's kind of how the Carolina Panthers have been this never-ending cycle of mediocrity. Is we got to get out of it. We got to develop our guys.
Okay, now give me a grade, Rashad. What's your grade for the draft, which of course includes Coker, it includes trades. So how did you think Dan Morgan did?
Yeah, I'm gonna give it a B-. If you include the trades, you include everything else that went around it, getting our future 2nd round pick back. I love that. And again, I think time will tell. Only time will tell how good this draft class is. They've got to be developed. I mean, I've said it 1,000 times. Development. You got to get the best out of these guys, and you can't change direction mid-course. You can't change direction. We got to see what Canellis. I think Canellis, and I'll say this. And I've been on record saying this on plenty of my shows so far this offseason, is that I think the Panthers are going to be better than a lot of people give them credit for. If you look at every power ranking and all the grades, it's been all bad, right? It's been all bad. We're 32nd, 33rd, 31st, 30th, wherever you're looking, it's been pretty bad. But I think the coaching was so bad last year and inept. Like, I think that had a lot to do with the reason why we were so bad. It's not a talent issue. It's a coaching issue. So now you get a competent, young, a forward-thinking head coach, a forward-thinking mind, offensive mind, creative mind. I think that it's going to get the wheels turning sooner rather than later. I'm not saying we'll make the playoffs or anything like that. I'd be a fool to say that. But I will say, I'll go on a limb to say that we'll 6 to 7, 8 wins. I think that's plausible for the Carolina Panthers this year. I think that's how bad we were last year from a coaching standpoint.
And again, it's why we would like for you to subscribe for a number of reasons here, but also because we are going to talk more once we get into training camp and so forth. Rashad will be back. We'll go inside this depth chart. We'll have an opportunity to talk about how some of the camps went, summer camps and all that, heading into the preseason and so forth. So we'll have a lot to talk about, dissecting the roster. Between that time, you check out, of course, the Panther Nation podcast YouTube channel, of course. So you can check out what Rashad has to say about Carolina and all of his excellent videos on the team. A couple of quick things before we wrap up. Okay, good draft. Some good players were added to the team. It looks like pass rush, though, seems to still be an issue. There's still a hole there. Now, they did bring in Clowney. That always seems to be a temporary fix wherever he goes. So, but, I'll leave it. The floor is yours. What is still needed after this offseason? Because we're pretty much nearing the end of it.
Yeah, I would say the biggest need for me right now is cornerback. I mean, you mentioned edge rusher. I'll say this. With the edge rushers, Evero normally gets pretty good production out of his edge rushers. Even you go back to the 2022 Broncos roster, there wasn't. I think the highest sack total was 6.5 sacks by an individual, right? So that he doesn't need an elite pass rusher to have a solid defense. What he does need is good cornerbacks, right? That his defense is predicated upon a secondary stopping the pass, slowing down the pass, and making that quarterback hold on to the football that much longer to then allow your pass rush to get there. So I think it all depends on how you look at it, right? And I think the biggest hole for us right now, we got Dane Jackson as a starter, who I think is a rotational guy up in Buffalo before he got to Carolina, and you got JC. JC is elite, right, when he's on the field. Is he going to stay on the field the entire year? I hope so. This is a contract year for him, so I hope he does. But right now, I'm looking at bringing back a Stephon Gilmore. Xavier Howard's still out there, so there's a couple guys that I'm looking at bringing in here to Carolina to shore up that secondary. Safety wise, we're fine. Jordan Fuller and Xavier Woods, we're straight there. I have no quarrels with that. But the cornerbacks, we need another solid cornerback to make this thing go, and I think that's the biggest hole for us for the Carolina Panthers right now.
Okay, and and it's too bad that we're doing this now before the schedule is released, but because did you notice anything, by the way, regarding the schedule?
Just the Germany game.
Okay. Just and who are they playing?
The Giants in Germany.
November 10th. Germany. Okay.
So it's a Brian Burns blood and guts game. So Brian Burns and Carolina going at it. Should be interesting.
All right. Okay. Now let's end this because I want to talk about just a little bit on the dynasty angle. And we talked about Brooks. So again, I think that's interesting to note that in the league that I'm in with Dave, again, Brooks went 9th overall. So he was the first running back taken. Let's see, Legette. Let's see, where did he go? Looks like, and a lot of receivers obviously went. He went in the second round. He was the 8th pick of the second round. So he went before Franklin, Polk, Burton, Quarterly, Wilson, Baker, so forth and so on. He went just ahead of Mitchell and Pearsall. So it was Mitchell, Pearsall, Legette. And by the way, do you know who? What's that?
I probably would have went Pearsall first. That 49ers offense, depending on what happened with their receivers, he's kind of going to be the future. So I don't know about Legette over Pearsall.
Yeah, well, that's actually how it went. It went Mitchell, Pearsall, Legette.
Okay, go. My bad. I thought you meant that.
Yeah. He did go ahead though of some of those others like Franklin, Polk, and Burton. But here's the interesting one: is that somebody by the name of Dave Rhodes has 3 picks so far, and his 3 picks have been first round, 8th pick overall, Xavier Worthy. Second pick, and again, you don't have his depth chart, so you don't know why he's making the picks, but second round pick, Xavier Legette. And he likes the X. And third round pick, tight end, Jatavion Sanders.
That Jatavion Sanders pick it's going to pay off. He's going to be solid, man. I'm telling you, he's going to be very, very good. He's already compared himself to the next Greg Olsen, or wants to be the next Greg Olsen. So We'll see, man. We'll see what happens with him. We'll see.
Yep. So as far as that's concerned, those I thought that was interesting to bring that up. And then Coker would be the other guy just to throw in there. Of course, you're not going to draft him in a dynasty league, but that's a guy that you definitely want to keep an eye on for dynasty league owners out there. And the reasons that we talked about in the beginning of the show. Because you're going to get these, like you said, of course, Rashad, there's always these under the radar college free agents. They make teams all the time, at least one or two. That's the way it should be if you're developing right and making the right call on these prospects. And so we'll see if Coker, even though it's a deep room now, we'll see if he can, but it's open. It's a wide open room now. And we'll see. Matter of fact, the next time we talk, it's going to be very interesting to find out how it all looks as far as the real depth chart at wide receiver. I know it'll only be the summer, but I'm sure because there's a lot of young players here. So they have to make big moves even in the summer, even without the pads on. Every chance you get as you're a young receiver, whether it's Legette, Smith-Marset, Mingo, Marshall, Coker, all these guys have got to do their best during the summer to put themselves in position to get a leg up for training camp, which is when next time we're going to talk again, Rashad. So
absolutely. I
appreciate it. And again, want to remind everybody, because you have one of these. Now, I don't know if you have I think you have the PDF version. So, but you can get the hard copy, you get the PDF version, and also the draft review guide, because this is going to be out. The reason why I'm interviewing Rashad, and of course, I would have done it anyway, but the timing reason is because I've got Carolina as one of the teams that I have to write for in the draft review guide. So I'm sure a lot of what you heard here today will go into the outline of the draft review that I give for Carolina. And I appreciate that, Rashad, sincerely. And you do a great job. And I think that even though times are tough for teams like Carolina and the Jets, we have to just keep positive. And one of these years, we're going to kind of have that season that like Jeff Risdon had, our buddy who covers the Detroit Lions. He had the big breakout season last year. So we need one of those.
Yeah, shout out to him. Well, I know we did the joint show last year, and so that's good to see. He stuck with it. And again, the Lions, they've been down for so long. So it's actually good to see them win.
It is.
There's a lot of teams you hate to see win, but the Lions, that's a great story. And kudos to all those fans. And the Carolina Panthers now find themselves in very similar. It ain't been that bad, but it's been pretty bad around here. And so hopefully, like you said, it'll change and our first fortunes will change. But we've had our glory days. 2015, we were riding high, and NFL is cyclical. It's up and down, and only the strong survive, right? Only the strong survive.
Well, it's time, and it looks like I think, and I know we'll talk, of course, more about this in training camp. But when you got a talent like Bryce Young, he's had his rookie year, so that's out of the way. There's more talent on this team. There's better coaching on this team. It's not a very strong division. I think they can compete to win the division this year. I had Tampa Bay winning the division last year. Everybody laughed at me, and Tampa Bay won the division. So I'm not saying I'm picking Carolina just yet. But I'm just saying,
who are you gonna pick? Go ahead and pick it so it happens, please.
It's too early.
We need all the voodoo we can get, man.
Yeah, but it's under consideration because that's how important the league, NFL. What's the most two important positions? Coach, quarterback. That's the two most important positions. And Carolina, you hope that they've got the right combo right there, and I think it's very possible they do. So, when is your next show? On YouTube, Rashad, and when is it regular schedule?
Yes, we go live every Tuesday at 8 p.m. But it's very important to hit that notification bell when you subscribe to us because we go live all the time. We're gonna have a scheduled release reaction late tonight at 9:30. Once the schedule is fully out, we'll digest it and talk about the ebbs and flows of the schedule. And so, anytime we'll be live for training camps and all that other stuff. But Tuesday is our regularly scheduled show.
All right. Matter of fact, I was just noticing, let's see, is this a comment? C3 Panther Pickle. Shout out to Panthers YouTuber podcasters. So there it is. There's C3 Panther Pickle. So anyway, we got one in because it's a live broadcast. So, Rashad, appreciate it. Can't wait to talk more Carolina Panthers football once we get to training camp. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it, buddy.